What's up, everyone? TJ Schwartz here. You're listening to the Edge and Flow podcast. We are back. We had a little bit of a break. I'm here with Lucas Burnley, my co-host. How you doing, man?
Doing good.
Yeah,
I'm excited to be
yeah.
recording. Feels like we've missed a year.
I know it does. I should say this podcast is about knife making, design, manufacturing, art, all the good stuff involving that, CNC machines and
All the
shop
little
moves
bits.
and
Yeah,
trade
shop
shows.
moves. Oh,
Yeah.
there's so much, dude. This has
Mhm.
been what are we 2 or 3 weeks out from the last episode?
I don't know. It's probably
Three at
three.
least.
It's probably
Okay.
three.
So we're trying to record this every week. And we realize that despite our best intentions, things can and will inevitably pop up. So this has definitely been one of those months.
Yeah.
But that leaves us with a bunch of really fun stuff to talk about. Where do you want to start?
Well, I know you went to Blade Show Texas. Do you want to start with that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's get into it. You've been once, right? You went.
Nope.
Oh,
I
you
so,
haven't gone at all.
so I went to Texas to visit Tactile like the week before Blade Show
Got it.
because I wanted to
Okay.
visit them, and they told me that it'd be hard to visit them during that show, right? Because then they wouldn't
Yeah,
be in the shop. So
makes sense.
yeah,
All right. So, dude, it's an awesome show. I was
nice.
I was super happy. And I say that it it has like an old school feel to it. So right now we have this kind of thing happening with shows where they're either getting really big or they're really small.
Mm,
Okay. And there's pros and cons to both. So like you and me, uh, as designers, big show is great, right?
yeah.
Because we get to see all the companies that we work with. We get to see product that's on the market. We get to really interact inside of the industry,
Hmm.
right? So for other makers, like if that's something you want, like those big shows, like the Big Blade Atlanta, like there's a lot of benefit in there. On the other side of the scale, you have like your 4 hour invitational with a bar, and that is high end, low output, like low attendance, but high attendance for the amount of product that's in the room.
Right, right.
Okay. If you're doing high end custom work, that or like hype work, that's where you want to be probably, right?
Yeah, yeah. If you're looking for like a very target rich environment as far as like very
Totally.
interested people that aren't
Yeah.
necessarily as much of a passerby like you might see in the big shows. Yeah.
Exactly. You're not going to
Yeah.
have someone walk up and think that your table lottery is to win something for free.
Right. Right.
Everybody understands the games. Oh, you're
Yeah.
having an auction? Cool. Silent or open?
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're doing a lottery? Great. Like, people understand it. They understand why they're paying $300 for a ticket.
Hmm.
And I mean, this is essentially like the inner sanctum of the collecting world, right?
Hmm.
And for a lot of makers, it's really attractive because for a lot of us, we don't need 3 days to go to a show. We don't have the output for 3 days. You can sell the product, see the people you want to see, have a really good time, see other makers, and be done.
Hmm.
But for me, this actually kind of leaves this middle ground, which I guess for a while I've been feeling like hasn't existed as much. And I say that like the USN show is in that category where it's big enough that you're at a show. You have some brands, you have a lot of customs, you have small brands that you don't know about, like, but it's really approachable size.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I guess mentioning USN actually I should bring this up too. So USN, since its inception, this is the Usual Suspects Network show, has always been in Planet Hollywood in Las Vegas. Um, as of maybe a month ago, they have canceled the show in Las Vegas for this year, which means they are looking for a new venue,
Hmm.
not in Vegas, but it will skip a year. So it'll start up
Uh,
again next year.
I see.
So kind of what I was saying, which is like there was already kind of a little bit of a downturn in that type of show. And I think that Blade, Texas fully occupies like that type of
Yeah.
space.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great to hear.
Yeah, it's
It's a
like,
mid-size is what you're basically describing.
yeah, but like
Yeah.
a mid-sized show. And I mean, I'm looking at this like from maker standpoint, obviously, but like also from a collector standpoint, right? Which is there's a few things that I love to see at a show, which is I really like when I see people that aren't knife enthusiasts like be able to come in,
Yeah.
right? But it's cool when it's also at a scale that's not like a massive trade show.
Yeah. Yeah. No
So
kidding.
you saw like parents walking around with their kids on Saturday. It's a 2-day show, not a 3-day show. Okay. It is in downtown Fort Worth. Dude, it was great getting out of 20-degree weather and like showing up and it being in like the 70s.
Yeah. It's great.
Um,
So how does that, you went to Blade West, you were there together 2 years ago. How does that
yep.
compare?
So I would say overall like size is really comparable,
Mhm.
but the energy is different.
It's
And this
Texas, so
it's Texas
yeah.
one, but the collectors that went and the makers that went are a little bit different than what you see at this point in Salt Lake.
Mm.
I think the fact that it's Texas drew a lot of like what I kind of consider as like, you know, my sector of the industry, kind of like elevated EDC side, like
Yeah.
kind of tactical, like, you know,
Yeah.
psi pops and single finger knucks and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
it it was there. It was like well represented from a customer standpoint. You know, CBJ, which is Craft Brew Junkies, had to get together. Um, and that to me is like the tipping point for a show where you start to have like the communities roll out. And man, it was the whole weekend, I was just kind of like this. It felt good going out and like having barbecue afterwards, or like we went to this crazy like country western bar called Billy Bob's, which is
Mm.
like it had to be 70,000 square feet or something. Like it just huge warehouse, but like inside there's like 9 or 10 bars. There's like bull riding, line dancing, like bar, just super fun. If you have the opportunities like that for people to interact and like hang out, that's how you build the community as a
Yeah.
maker and as a collector. If you're a collector, be it that, you know, like be in the places with the makers that you
Yeah.
want something from.
Yeah.
If you're a new maker, be in the places that have the makers you want to know and the collectors that you want to interact with. And so anytime a show can provide that, I think it's like gold.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. And
Yeah.
I've always enjoyed that sort of the atmosphere as far as like the restaurants that fill up and stuff
Yep.
around a show. I've
Yep.
always found to be like some of the most meaningful experiences.
Yep.
Obviously, in Atlanta, you have the pit, which sort of keeps the center of gravity like more dense. But like in Salt Lake, it's a similar thing though. You go to pretty much any bar around
Within
that
walking
area, and
distance,
there's like,
right?
oh, there's the Tops guys, like the whole team is right there at
Yeah.
that table next to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and then shooting pool, having conversations. Like it's awesome. It's a cool.
It's our scale of networking event that is really good.
Hmm.
I didn't have a table. I signed up for a table for next year because it's good enough. I got really excited. And I would say like the pit is such a unique asset to a show that is partially well, I mean, not even partially, it's environmental. Not every, you know, show venue has a hotel atrium with, you know, in a circle with bars and
Yeah.
food.
Yeah.
So Salt Lake and Texas, neither one have that. But I think that it's tight enough and the hotels are close enough that you kind of saw people like roll. Like if you went into I stayed at the Omni. It's like you roll into the bar at the Omni. There's people from the show there.
Hmm.
And this is again, it's kind of at a scale that is approachable, which I really like. The PKA show was a knife show that was in Denver for years, and it had kind of the same thing. It was at a hotel. You'd go into the bar, there'd be people there, but it wasn't a lot of people. It was just you saw somebody that you knew.
Hmm.
And man, it felt really good. So the only thing I can say is like it felt like an old school knife show. um, in a time where like all the shows are changing constantly.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it was like
It's
pretty
cool.
nice.
Throwback.
Yeah.
I've got to go. Keep
Yeah.
telling myself I'm going to. It's like always something weird. Obviously, this year was a wild one. Wasn't going to happen this year, but
Yeah.
next year. It's always next
It
year. But
might be,
yeah.
I mean, like I have a suspicion that for certain makers, I think that Blade Texas will actually become the priority over Blade Atlanta purely because of the scale, the ease of getting there. And I think you can do enough real work there. Whether that's networking or sales or both, that it might make it worthwhile if someone's feeling like, man, Blade Atlanta is just getting like too big. It's too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Um, there's a little more focus on the knives. The other thing that I really loved about it is it was a it was really a good cross section of the industry. So like if you look at like the stock removal side as a broad spectrum of like, you know, tactical stuff, art stuff, like anything that fits in that, slip joints, whatever. And then you look at like the forging side, there's actually some separation, and not all shows have all kind of
Balance.
yeah, like they don't have a yeah, exactly. They don't have a balance of, forged makers or like traditional knives. And this one, it really does. And it
Yeah.
all fits, it all works. And for me, like that creates a certain kind of like, I don't know, like flow for a knife show where like as a maker, like walking around, you can get inspired by work. It's not like you're in an echo chamber.
Hmm.
Like everything is tactical or everything is
Yeah.
forged. And I want to see like more and more of those
Yeah.
crossovers,
Yeah. That's fantastic.
So
You talked
big
me
fan.
into it.
Yeah, big fan. Dude. Only, I guess let's see. If I was gonna give it, if there's any downsides, it would be that there's not a ton of food like walking distance from the show because you are in
Mm.
like a downtown area. There's enough that you can get a meal, and some of the hotels have like good bars and good restaurants. There's some good steakhouses. But I found myself kind of like ducking out to like go find like barbecue
Yeah. Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
find something like off the main
Yeah.
kind of strip.
Less dense.
Yeah. But
Yeah. Yeah.
dude, had a blast. I think I sent you some crazy pictures.
Yep.
Felt like very Texas.
Hmm.
Um, so
Texas, man.
yeah, we got to visit someone's shop that they had a like a 1980s like Hilux pickup truck, really sweet, and they were getting ready to mount a GE minigun in the back for a for a fun rig to
Yeah.
go
Sounds
and
fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
very
That's
fun.
awesome.
So
Yeah.
so yeah, felt very Texas. All right. So while I was doing that, you were smack dab in the middle of your move, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is week 2 of actually making knives in the new shop. So the
Okay.
move, it's always like quote unquote complete with a move until you're about a year later and you actually get the last box opened and organized. You know what I mean? So it's like we can't call the move complete, but it's been 2 weeks of making knives and it's been going really good. It's smooth in the ways I want it to be, but there always is that like every time you turn around to go pick up like a specific tool or something, there's always like, oh, that was in that box or that's not plugged in or there's a weird shadow from the light, we need more light in this spot, you know what I mean? Like it's been a ton of just sort of ironing out of the shop for the last 2 weeks, but we have been producing knives, so it's it's been hugely eye-opening as far as like what we can do here, I think. So it's been really good. It's been a lot of work, but it's been
I
good.
mean, the fact that you're up and running inside of 2 weeks, I think for anybody that has moved to shop is probably pretty impressive. I mean, granted,
Oh,
it's close.
yeah,
You
that
moved
helps.
in there, you had like everything kind of ready, but still, I think that. So, what did the total move? If you've been up and running for 2 weeks, did you move
So
inside of a week?
we lost basically 1 week and then the tail end
Yeah,
of another. So
that's
um
insane.
and let me rethink that. Honestly, it was like the tail end. We lost the tail end of one week and the beginning of the next week. So it was like maybe like 4 or 5 business days that
Yeah,
were like jacked up. So it
yeah,
went very smooth. Honestly, there
it's
was
pretty smooth.
we were very fortunate with the riggers, very fortunate with the electrical, like all the people that helped us do it, as far as like services, they all showed up on time, did their job, except for internet. We're still waiting on the dang internet. So right now we're hotspotting. I guess that's the only thing that we're still waiting on somebody, but all the critical stuff, people showed up, did good work, didn't drop machines, put power where it needed to go.
Man,
So it's
the power actually, you gave me a little background on like the electricians. That is, dude, that makes it so much easier
mhm,
when you have a team that like hustles and knows what you need, what they need to do, like
yeah,
didn't stall you nothing. They like
yeah.
came in.
And what was crazy is they didn't ask like hardly any questions, which actually made me nervous.
Sure.
And so I was like kind of looking, I would like come over and I'm like, so you guys got any questions? They're like, no. I'm like, okay. And they
Okay.
left and I went and we moved everything in. Like, shoot, it's exactly what I said. So it's like they just, I put out on a piece of paper what it needed to look like and they did it and they left. So
Man,
it was awesome.
and they are probably a team that is familiar enough with doing like light industrial
Mhm.
that they look and they're like, oh yeah, we understand what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That right there, just that alone, finding someone who understands like what the mission
Yeah. Yeah.
is so nice.
For sure. Yeah, it was great. And weird thing, super peripheral, but like the X7, we moved it, got her wired up. It's now wired to like direct three-phase power, so
Oh,
it's not phase converted anymore.
mm-hmm.
So we've got this tool rack that's mounted to the front of it that's aftermarket, but it's like Sile stickered, but it's made in
Okay.
California. So it's like you can call Sile and get that front tool rack and it ships from another company in California.
Got it.
So I mounted it on there at the old shop and it used to have a tiny vibration because it's only mounted at the top at the old shop. And we put the Sile here and we were running it actually 2 days ago. And I was listening. I was like, man, that thing's rattling way harder, like that front rack. I'm like, that is concerning, right? Like, why is there a way bigger rattle now after the machine's moved? But it doesn't make sense because the machine has 3 feet, so it can't be unstable. Like, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
And so I'm like, what? And then I was listening to the machine. I was like, that thing's moving faster. And it occurred to me that under a phase converter, even if the phase converter is oversized, which ours was like twice the size necessary,
Mm-hmm.
the motor it's with a rotary phase converter, that motor has to be able to match the demand, like, and it can't do that instantly, right? And when you direct
Interesting.
hardwire to three phase on a rapid move, it can ask for whatever amperage it needs and get it instantaneously.
Right.
And so it's like watching the machine, there's less lag on the rapids, even though it felt fast before, but it's like way faster now. And I did not
Oh,
anticipate
wow.
that. So it's actually like full speed now. And I didn't even know that it was actually running under speed because of it being phase converted.
It's a sweet bonus.
Yeah, I know.
Like
So,
extra horsepower.
and it's
Like,
like fast enough that I'm like, we're going to have to take that rack off and mount it. Like we have a place to wall mount it now. And I'm like, it's because the tools are in it, like the tools are in little
right.
holes. And so they like slide back and forth. And so,
Oh,
yeah, it needs some other movement. But yeah, super weird tangent. But like thinking about the power, I'm like, the benefits of having actual industrial power to industrial machines. I thought it'd just be a, direct swap, but it's actually an improvement.
it, man, just thinking about like being in the last shop, there is something about being in a commercial space that feels like very legit.
Yeah.
Do you agree? Like being in
Yeah.
there, do you feel different?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, because we got like a real dumpster, like
Right.
industrial zoning only.
Yeah.
And we've been overwhelming the little green trash can at our house because
Yeah.
we were just had the one residential green can and we're literally piling it high. And then
Yeah.
we'd have a trailer and it was like almost every other week we'd have to do a dump run in addition, just like, shop stuff. You get a big thing of Kydex, you got this giant cardboard sleeve. And so we just have this dumpster and I'm like, that's perks of industrial right there. I mean, where would you put
Mhm.
that at your house? It's
Dude, shipping,
yeah,
receiving,
yeah.
there's so many little kind of benefits. That said, this morning I was in the shop and I see my door open at 6 a.m. and it's Winston.
Hmm.
He's like, I want to work with you.
Yeah.
I'm like, and he hung out with me for probably like 20 or 30 minutes. And we just like, I had like I grabbed like a bag of mixed like nuts and bolts. And I was like, all right, like go ahead and like assemble, like put a washer on and then like find the right nut for the right bolt. And like he just sat at my bench and did that. Right now, that feels pretty valuable.
Hmm. That
And
is
I
nice.
when like we were in our like offsite shop with Bo, so Bo would have been like younger than 3. And like, but I guess Maddie would bring him over. Like, they're
Hmm.
still around enough.
Yeah.
Maybe it wouldn't be an issue now. I don't know.
Yeah. 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 The where we're at with that is I think Becca brings the kids over like once a day at least, just because she walks every day, and so she can
Yep.
literally walk past here. But uh, Willie Wilson, he's very handsy and he's small and he doesn't,
Yeah.
he's 2, so
Yeah.
he's a close watch.
Yeah.
Delta, I think I will once we get settled in get Delta over here for a couple hours, like just her, so because she's 4 now and she's pretty good at like sitting down and doing something cool, messing around, drawing a picture or something. So
Hmm.
she could probably come work here a little bit, have fun. But Willie,
You know
he's
what?
a he's a liability.
That's Winston too. He's like
Yeah,
he would say like what that sheen do, and it's like
yeah,
he's looking for buttons
yeah, yeah,
because he knows what something's gonna happen, and it's
yeah.
like he's pretty good now. Bo Bo is 6, and so he'll get curious about things. Like I have to be careful with him if I have like a tray of parts that I'm working on because he'll want to like walk over and pick something up,
Yeah.
but he doesn't push buttons. He's pretty aware.
Hmm.
Um, Yesterday after school, he came in. He was like, "Hey, can I just like hang out and work?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." Dude, he sat there for probably an hour. Do you know what perler beads are?
Say that again.
Perler
No,
beads.
I don't.
Okay, so just think like 8-bit images made of like plastic. So you like have a little gridded tray and you put little beads in place and then you iron them
Mhm.
and it gives you like an image. It's almost like
Oh,
it
I know
gives
what
you
you're
like an
talking
image that looks
about.
like cross
Yeah,
stitch.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
And dude,
I've seen those.
it was rad because he was like super quiet and super content. And I think he's a lot like me. And I think just coming in, he's been in school all day. He's like overstimulated, right? A lot of times he comes home and he's like wild. He
Hmm.
came into the shop, he sat down, he was quiet. And like the rest of the day, he was like super sweet with me. He
Yeah,
was like pretty mellow. And I was like, okay, 100% like that can be a thing. I was like, you
yeah,
can come in anytime you want and work on your own projects like with me.
yeah, yeah.
Dude, that's pretty cool. But and
That's
that's the thing where you're at now, like you can even put like a little bench in your office and just be like, all
yeah,
right, like Delta, you can hang out here, you know?
yeah. I do plan to do that. That's a good idea.
Love it.
Yeah, yeah. It's and also because we do 410s, like
Yeah,
we've kind of talked about like on Fridays coming and do like some sort of house project in here, and it's like just have the shop on Friday, bring the
ooh,
kids. So we've already done that a couple times because we did so much work on the shop on the weekends that the kids like kind of know the shop just from hanging out on the
yeah.
weekends. But so might think about that too. But
How it like where are you at with space usage right now?
so obviously we have a lot of room. You know what I mean? We can echo this place, pretty well.
Yeah,
So I mean, I don't see limitations coming for a while. Obviously, that's the famous last words and stuff,
sure.
but yeah, it's a lot of room. It's a big difference.
I was just like even just thinking about like house projects, so just being able to have like somewhere inside to do
Oh,
carpentry
oh,
projects,
easy. Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, we basically left the center bay empty. So it's
Nice.
basically 20 by 60 is empty. So, yeah,
Dude.
we
Is that
could
separated? So you have
no.
multiple bays? Okay.
So it's bays as in there's just posts.
Yeah, yeah.
And so there's like 3 columns, 3 rows.
Right.
And so the walls, the 2 sides that have walls are where we basically installed everything. And
Yeah.
so the middle is like there's a bay door on both ends of that middle. So you could
Yeah.
drive all the way through. And so yeah, you could park like a 1-ton truck with like a 35-foot camper like inside of it. It's tons of room in the middle. So
This is like way jumping the gun, but like I never stop looking at real estate. Do you look at prices for shop spaces where you're at?
I haven't, because I'm holding out. It may be
Yeah.
overly optimistic, but I'm holding out for someday having that on my own property, like not urban, like
Yeah.
a more rural situation. And
Yeah.
so it involved building. So that's like the dream, maybe pipe dream, but I just haven't looked that much at buying like actual real
Yeah.
estate
Yeah. Yeah.
that's commercial, So
That's kind of like for us, that's like in our 5 year
mhm.
is either like buy a bigger house as the boys get older and build a bigger shop, or buy a commercial space. And I don't know which way we would go, but the problem that we have is like here commercial space is like
Yeah.
fairly expensive.
Yeah.
Like your mill plus, which
Yeah.
hurts.
It's not quite there that level here, but the problem we have is like where we are, there is no commercial space in this
Right.
town because it's a farming town. And so there's like two commercial buildings in the town. You know what I mean? And
Really?
so yeah, and so we're in like one of the only actual commercial spaces around.
Right.
And then the only other ones are like poultry processing, and they're like 50,000
Right.
square foot with
Huge row
like
houses.
freezers, and you know what I mean? And
Right.
so or like barns and stuff. So it's, if you'd have to go towards Boise, which you get into tons of industrial, the closer you get to Boise,
Right.
like huge opportunity there. But
Yeah, but then when
soon-
you start getting into like having a commute and like all
yeah,
these things like that
and
defeats the
then
purpose.
the price in the Boise area for commercial is, I don't know for sure, but it probably rivals Bend.
Yeah,
It's pretty off the charts. So,
it's
yeah.
pretty up there.
I've heard that because Boise's housing has been nuts, and I've heard that the commercial went even worse because everybody's trying to build houses instead, and so there's a little bit of a lopsidedness right now. So not a
We
good
saw we saw like just recently I started looking at what is the what's the I forget what the commercial website is, basically like Zillow for
loop net.
commercial. Yeah, LoopNet.
Mhm.
Just recently there's properties popping up where I'm like, that is like borderline approachable, like for what you're
Mhm.
getting.
Mm.
It's not cheap, right?
Mhm.
But you might be getting like a newer building or like a piece of property with 3 buildings on it and like a total of 5 bays with offices
Yeah.
and bathrooms at
Yeah.
a price where you're like, it would cash flow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That starts, and it's like in town. That starts to be like pretty, I don't know.
It's
I'm the
tempting.
same way with houses. Like for some reason, like the ownership of a place gives me so much like stability.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Shop is like kind of the same way.
I agree.
Like,
Yeah. No, that's been on my mind because we're renting this shop, obviously. So it's been, the main thing where it gets me is like there's things that I would do better if I owned it, as
right.
far as like the overall setup, and like, we did it, like I want everything we do in here to be a good job, like not a total liability, but it's like
Yeah.
the nicer thing is something I would save until I owned it. You know what I mean? As far as
Right.
like there's power things I could have considered, you know what I mean? But it's hard to throw
Yeah.
money down the hole.
The amount of work
Yeah.
that you put into it.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, it's been a dream, dude.
I love it.
It's much more efficient. Dalton's shipping knives right now. I have shipped all the knives up to now, and it
Mhm.
just the way our setup was over there, that was the only option was for me to do it. And so now I can inspect, he can ship. So it's like he assembles, lays them all out on a bench. I inspect every single one, fit it in the sheath, make sure sheath fitment's good, set it back down on the order, and then it gets shipped. And so it's like
So by the time you put a knife in the sheath, it stays in the sheath. That's
never
done. But the
comes out,
fact that it's in the sheath,
is
yeah,
inspected.
yeah, I love that.
And so the we just put a folding table kind of as a mock-up for that
Mm-hmm.
because we weren't sure of the size and all that. So we pretty much decided if it was like two 6 foot by 24-inch benches that were back to back in the middle
Mm-hmm.
of the room, and then on one side is all the assembled knives lining up, and then it's my
Mm-hmm.
job to move them to the other side. So it's not just in a sheath, but
Right.
it's like on the other side, and the other side is facing the shipping side of the room. So
Right.
it's like the assembly side of the room is putting it on one side, and then I'm the one that moves it across into the shipping side by inspecting it, and then it can go out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like
That's a great
it's
idea.
just a purely visual, like can't mess it up,
Yeah,
type of
there's
deal.
no mistakes, no
Yeah.
confusion.
Yeah. And so we have like a mini warehouse like in the corner of that room so that it's like pick and pull type situation,
Hmm.
with shelving so that uh, the shipping side is where you also box things. So like these LT5s that are coming, we're going to pre-box and sell after they're finished. And
Right.
so after they've been assembled and then inspected, they pass to that shipping side where they would get boxed and put in that like racking. And the racking is right next to the shipping. So it's all kind of like a little flow. And then
Hmm.
we use those U-line bins you might have seen on my Instagram with our knives. So blue bins are in the, we call that the clean room. Blue bins are in the clean room. Red bins are in the shop, and they don't ever intermix. And so
Oh,
blue bin means finished. It's like finished, maybe not necessarily assembled, but like those components are finished. And so on our spreadsheet system, we have next to every component a checkbox that turns blue when you click it. And so the thing is like if you put either like a sharpened tang that's ready to go, or a set of scales or a sheath into a blue bin, you check it blue. And so on that screen, it's like blue means it's in the clean room, not
hmm.
checked means it's not in the clean room. So it's like red is moving around in the shop in the dirty room, dirty side. Blue is on the clean side that's finished. And it has been a really cool little system. We never were able to do it
Dude,
before because
sounds
we
like it.
only had one space. So it was like we had color coding, but it became difficult because it's like we had to stack bins on top of each other that were like
Yeah.
all different stuff. And so now
Yeah.
it's like, no, it goes right here. Like,
I think that's one of the areas that when you think about shop space isn't necessarily like the most obvious, which is it's not just the space for work. It's the space for ideas and to
mhm.
like like you said it's like a small warehouse. The
Yeah.
fact that you can start to learn and implement concepts that could be scaled, I think is
Mhm.
one of the biggest benefits where you start to think about space in a different way.
Yeah.
We've talked about like my shop a little bit where I'm like, yeah, I feel I'm like in this weird middle ground right now because on one hand, I've got all this like old materials and like random hardware and stuff that like as a creative is awesome to have around, but for a productive like business or product line serves no purpose. It has
Mhm.
no purpose in day-to-day operation of like the majority of things that I'm making. If the space is there, that's not an issue because then
Yeah.
you essentially have like a cell that is
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
Um,
a little bit of a like experimentation
yeah,
cell. Yeah.
totally. Or you
Yeah.
have like, it's like right now I'm like, I've got a welding table in my shop. I'm not welding all the time, but I need to build things occasionally.
Hmm.
If you have more space, you can have a maintenance area. And it all I just like to compartmentalize stuff that way where you're like, okay, cool. Yep. If we need to build a workbench and we need to build a table, like all those tools are there. I'm not going to the same toolboxes that have knife making tools and like
Yeah.
borrowing things out. As I say this, I realize that even at the scale that I'm at, I can still compartmentalize more than I am,
Mm, yeah.
probably, which is kind of fun. But yeah, I think space, like really, it's like your brain expands.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
For
just like,
sure.
yeah, here's all these areas that we can play with. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah. And we used to have like, we do the Kanban thing. And so you have your inventory that you're pulling from, and then you have the backup inventory. And the backup inventory, we used to have a very hard time like sorting through it because we couldn't fully organize it. So they were kind of in like totes. So it's like, oh, I need this specific screw. You'd have to go like
Right.
dig. And now it's like a Kanban shelf, like a 6 foot tall
Right.
shelf.
I need to come out and visit. I
It's,
really do.
I'd love to have you out. And you can
I
definitely pull your truck in and
can't wait.
pop the camper. There's a
I,
bathroom. It'd be
I
good.
love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Just roll right inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, that just I think especially for the type of work that you're doing, that ability to just be like, okay, this efficiency now has the space that it needs
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And
is amazing.
it really felt like that. It was like at the old shop, the vision and the idea was already in place, but it was like crumpled up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was like, yeah, it would work, but it's like it doesn't actually work when you don't have anywhere to put the bins.
Right.
And so it was kind of like a theoretical partially
Right.
idea. And then now it's like, no, that's actually how it
It
works.
actually
Like
works. How
it,
tall are your ceilings?
so there's beams and stuff. The lowest part of the beam is 13 feet. And then the actual ceiling is between like 14 and 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I want to say like in our last shop, the ceilings might have been like 16 or 18 feet. And I always
That's
had this
high.
thing of like, it would be sick to just have like a drone that could like roll around on its own and just like take shop video.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a pre-programmed path. You're like, all right, you're gonna go like every 45 minutes and like go to these areas and like record
Yeah.
footage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seemed cool. Never
That
did
would,
it.
yeah, that'd be fun to fly a little
I
drone in
did buy
here.
a drone though, and I did
Yeah.
try to take shop video, but it didn't stick. That's full
Yeah.
ADHD.
Yeah. Well, I want to try it because for now, my office and the clean room have like open air because we built 8 foot walls around them. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
most of the wall was already existing, so that's not all the way to the ceiling. So you could fly a drone like over the clean room and then back over the shop, like without hitting anything.
It's
So
kind of cool,
that'd
like
be pretty cool.
additional, I don't know, additional content. It's
Yeah,
kind of fun.
yeah. No, that'd be fun. Yeah, we might have to raise those walls to the ceiling. But all it would be is for like dust reasons, so we wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily like fully frame it 2x4s and stuff. We'd probably just use like a some sort of barrier. Like they make this it's basically the exact shape as cardboard in terms of like the
Mm-hmm.
corrugation, but it's actually like white plastic.
Yep.
And we were
I
thinking
know
about
exactly
putting
what you're
that
talking
up
about.
to the ceiling so that it's like you just see this white panel that's just air, just blocking dust. Um, for
That's a
the
pretty good idea. Do you have, it's weird to ask now because you have so much more space, but do you have a mist buster
no,
on your machines?
I don't. Only the one runs coolant, so it's the only one that would need it.
Right. The others don't. Yeah.
We don't have mist issues right now because we're running small diameter tools and
Right.
hydraulic holders. Hydraulic holders are really good for like mitigating mist because they're like perfectly circular.
Right.
And so like it seems like the hydraulic holders don't, it's not a problem.
Don't
But
need it as much.
um,
Right. Because yeah, so like I'm running like ER collets
yeah,
and like they've
those
got nuts. And so
it's like
like
a little turbo fan. Yeah,
yeah, the coolant hits it, splatters all over.
yeah.
So you're running hydraulic for all tools?
All but one.
Okay.
Only reason being is like the tool that we like for our chamfers is double-ended, and
Okay.
for whatever reason, it's like the ER or the hydraulic holder doesn't really like the double-ended tools.
Okay.
It like doesn't fit. It doesn't feel right when it's in there,
Right.
which kind of makes sense because if like the inside of a hydraulic holder, it's like the walls are bowing in to like
Right. To
compress,
like
and
hold
so
that.
it's like if it's double-ended, it's kind of like it just
Got some
it worried me
weirdness.
enough to where we have kept that one in an ER call it as other than that, it's hydro.
What tool holders are you using?
Mary Tool.
Meritul?
Yeah. Yeah. Mary Tool
Okay.
hydro holders. Yeah. They have Cat 40 and BT30 and everything we
I'll have
need.
to look at
So
that.
yeah,
It's funny,
they're
like,
awesome.
so last week, basically, I started gearing up for show season. So I'm going to do Blade Show Atlanta and I'm doing Billy Cho's Pacific Northwest Custom
Hmm.
Invitational. I always get that like messed up. PNWCI.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I have to kind of get ready for them simultaneously. And it's interesting, man. I don't know if I'm like some of this is stuff is like learning just through osmosis and like conversations with you or like Jens or just, but as I'm going through my processes now, I'm seeing these areas where I'm like, oh, I could like do that in a more accurate way. And I'm like, wait, how do I know that though? Like, where am I getting that? It's just interesting because I
Hmm.
haven't been machining a ton lately. Um, it's both frustrating and super exciting.
I've listened to every single episode since the very first one of the Business of Machining podcast. And I got to
Uh-huh.
say, I've learned a lot of osmosis through them because John Grimsmo is one of them and he's a knife maker. So there's
Right.
that
It
contextual
relates.
thing. But I actually like the fact that John Saunders doesn't know a thing about knives other than that he just likes them because
Right.
he's doing something totally different. And it's like the ideas, it's like he's kind of more down that like Jay Pearson track of like
Yeah.
hyper efficient, like billet aluminum manufacturing.
Manufacturing. Yeah.
Yeah. And more classical machine shop type situation. And so it's just been cool to just learn.
Okay. I've listened to like episodes like off and on, but I've just
Mhm.
never, I listened. That's actually a good question for you too. Okay. So basically, I listen to a lot of tech and a lot of investing.
Mhm.
Okay. What, what podcasts, like what genre area do you like listen to most frequently?
Um, I bounce around, but I really like Lex Friedman. I don't know if you ever listen
Yeah.
to
I
Lex.
just listening to Lex Friedman a
Yeah,
few minutes ago.
Lex is legit. And Business and Machining, and then Carbide Content, which I think Grant might listen to our podcast. And here's a
Mm-hmm.
reminder, Grant, you guys need to post another episode. And I know
Ooh.
I'm not the one that should be saying that, but I'm
You're
just
3 weeks late.
I'm just saying I miss the old Carbide Content. That's a good one. So,
It's pretty
but
fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's I used to listen to more podcasts before I had Dalton in the shop, and then
Mm-hmm.
it just got to where it's like when you're working with people, it's a little bit weird to listen to something long form like that. I don't do it as
It's
much. I
harder.
always I
Yeah.
wear noise canceling headphones all day, every day, but I've gone to where I just turn them on and leave them on noise cancel and
Yeah.
not play anything. Because if someone tries
Yeah.
to talk to me, it's just better.
Yeah.
Uh,
That
but
makes sense.
yeah,
I'm listening to a lot.
yeah.
Although I've been like forcing myself to listen to music again because
Hmm.
I think it's interesting. It's almost like social media sometimes where I'm like, I, s- I want something there, but I'm like, I actually don't need this.
Hmm.
Like, and I'll notice it with like certain conversations where I'm like, why am I listening to this? I'm actually this episode is like not interesting to
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
It's just
2 hours
background noise,
in,
and
you
I'm like,
realize that. Yeah,
yeah, I should probably just listen to music or like
yeah,
turn it off.
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes you can overdo it, or I have on the like just information just pouring. And
Overload.
especially when it's like, yeah, this is really not what I care about, and
Yeah.
I already listened to an hour of it or whatever. Yeah, I've had
Yeah.
that.
Like too
Um,
many things.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You gotta be careful about that. But yeah, business and machining, that's where I've kind of absorbed a lot. But yeah, the hydro holders, I highly recommend them. I think one of the biggest benefits for us, besides the mist, is I've said this before, but like tool changing. Like
Mm-hmm.
when the tool wears out, we have like a map of our tool life. So it's like as soon as we hit this many of on this
You
tool,
just
it
change.
just changes. So we don't have to. It's earlier than when the finish would be like problematic.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like unless something bad
How did you
happens,
develop that process?
just in the beginning, just running them in every part, looking at the finish, like looking at the chamfer, looking at the perimeter, looking at the jimping. And then eventually it was like in the first couple of batches, I was like, okay, this tool starts to die at about like 52 parts almost
Okay.
every time. And at about
Yeah.
like 48, it's starting to get a little bit washed out.
And
And
then
so,
from there you'll get a chip or something
yeah.
or
So
yeah.
I draw that back like a few knives prior to that happening. And so,
Mm-hmm.
and we got to where a lot of them were hovering around like 40 to like 50, sometimes as much as 60, but we ended up with like the main body of tools that we use, just doing them all at 40. So that it's like you're just
So
keeping
yeah,
track
so I've
easily.
never done that. Like I'm not doing the numbers that you're doing, so I don't have the data, but I will watch for finish specifically. And there's certain jobs where I know like, okay, like I'm going to wear this out faster, but I'm not rotating all of my tools at the same time. It's like,
Yeah.
I've got like little carbide, like circuit board drills
Yeah.
that, I mean, if I don't break them, they run.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like they're probably run hundreds of parts.
Yeah. I will say like all of our carbide stuff, because it's like you're doing the perimeter, then you're doing the
Yeah.
chamfer, and it's like they end up wearing out about the same time ish.
Yeah.
But like our drills are we definitely change earlier than we need to.
Yeah.
But I've
Yeah. Yeah.
found that just using high speed drills instead of carbide is like perfectly acceptable, and they cost like $2 a piece.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah,
Fraction.
could I get twice as many as what I'm getting? Probably, but like it's really easy to just like, all right, tool change over time, change out the carousel one at a time, just go through, do it
Right.
back in business. And then that's what I was talking about with the hydros is if you're going to change like 7 tools in a row, it
Yeah.
really adds up, like taking collets apart, blowing them out, wiping them
Yeah.
down, retorquing. So it's like you leave, like you change that tool, it's in the spindle. You literally just stick the Allen straight in the hydro, like in the spindle. You just let the tool drop into your hand, stick the new one in, tighten it, next tool. And so it's like you don't You don't
No,
have
no
to.
torque spec. Do you actually like if you're using like an ER collet, do you torque it?
I don't, and I have a really nice torque wrench. And the
Yeah.
reason I don't torque it is I found that the torque specs for
Yeah.
those is way tighter than what I ever want or have needed to.
Yeah. It's
And
freaky.
I've tightened it that tight, and then I go to undo it, and I'm like, dude, my freaking bench is moving. Like I
Yeah.
can't. So I've just never had pull-out issues because I'm not. I think if you're hogging like aluminum and you have
Sure.
like a large chip load and like a heavy cut, that's where
It
those
becomes
torque
more
specs come
critical.
from. But when you're doing stainless steel and titanium, like you're not, 2 inches deep
Yeah.
into a block, like trying to
Right.
hold
Of
onto that
something
tool.
grabby.
Yeah. And so like I said, we just have only the one ER chuck that we use regularly, and we just hand tighten it basically till it stops and like just one little pull. And I know it's under spec, so I'm not hurting anything because I did torque it to where I was like, okay, we're definitely not over tightening it, you know?
So if you're running drills, are you running and you're running those in hydraulic?
Oh, I do run those two drills in drill chucks
Okay.
because you could kind of consider doing it in a hydro, but they're weird diameters.
I was gonna say that's one of
So
the reasons,
yeah,
like for a lot of my small drills, I
yeah,
run with a 1/8 shank. And
yeah,
that's like the nice thing about circuit board drills is like I've
yeah,
got a 30-second drill bit up to like 100 thou or eighth of an inch, and they're all
yeah.
an eighth of an inch shank.
That's amazing. Yeah, hydro holder would
So
be perfect for that. I know that there's a Cat 40 1/8 inch hydro holder that they make. That,
uh,
so it's like a giant holder with this little tiny hole in it, and
that's pretty
it
sexy.
is sweet. But yeah, we use the drill chucks, and they don't mist either because those are super low RPM. When you're using a decent sized drill, two flute, pretty
Hmm.
low RPM. So, but
Something to think about. I sent you pictures of the inside of my machine yesterday. We were talking about
yeah,
coolant,
yeah,
and that, dude, it's really strange. So back in New Mexico, I just used tap water.
mm,
Never had a problem. No buildup. Coolant was super, super clean.
hmm,
And I use this Hangster Furs, um, which it's awesome too. Like you can use it for surface grinding. Like
yeah.
it's so much range.
It's like vegetable based.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
vegetable based, non-toxic. Like it doesn't give you skin problems. Like it's amazing.
that's awesome.
But on Cape and in Bend, I get this like nasty brown buildup
Mm,
inside of my machine.
mm.
Um, and barring
Hard water.
using, yeah, I think it's hard water. And like barring using distilled, I haven't figured out a solution for it.
So here's what I would like to do because we don't, I get a little bit of hard water on like the inside of our coolant tank, which concerns me. But
Uh-huh.
it hasn't been an issue other than that, like 10 years in the future, is that just gonna be like crusty.
Yeah.
You can get an RO filter off Amazon that's like designed for like your house.
Yep.
And then what you can do is just hook up like line pressure to it and then fill up like
Yep.
a big tote. And then it's like
Yep.
you're not going to get like your full volume of like tap water. So it would take
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
forever. So if you have like like get a blue, 55-gallon drum and just fill it with water and then use that. And
And
then,
use that.
yeah, I've been
I'm usually adding
thinking about
like
that.
I'll add 5 gallons at a time. This is the thing. Okay, and I don't have like the experience of a number of coolants in like high production capacity environments
Hmm.
to know if this is rare or not. But like, dude, I very rarely ever change my coolant. Like
Yeah.
my coolant lasts forever. Like every 2 or 3 years,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
But I mean, literally all I do is top it off. Like
Yeah.
5 gallon bucket of water, add, 4 ounces or whatever it is, a coolant to bring it up to 3%, add the 3% to the now, concentrated 10% that's in my coolant tank,
Yeah.
clean the chips. I've got a skimmer and it goes forever.
Yeah.
I'm sure somebody could tell me that I'm doing it wrong, but like it doesn't smell. It seems like my tool life is good.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
pretty neat.
That Hangsterfer sounds good. We've had good luck with ours, but the reason I texted you this week about your Hangsterfer's coolant, here's why. Weird other situation. So we pull our knives out of the tumbler and we're getting to where we put like quite a bit of knives in there. And
Yeah.
we have found that obviously the water in a tumbler is going to be super hard water no matter what you do because it's grinding stones the whole time. So it's like
Right.
if we pull a bunch of knives out and if you just like are at all lackadaisical about like getting them clean and oiled, they will get hard water marks on them that is actually very difficult to remove,
Mm-hmm.
just drying out. And so you'll be like, you'll wipe off the dust and there'll just be like a little bit of a streak that's like, what the heck? You know what I mean? Like your
Mm-hmm.
fridge door when the water just turns it white. Like that's what happens on our knives. So we've been doing like where you literally open the tumbler and you pull one out at a time, blow it off,
Yep.
oil it, and it's
Yep.
like it's too slow. Like it's taking too long. And so here's what we did is we got an ultrasonic cleaner and we put those divider racks inside of it, like what our bins hold. So it's like
Oh,
you can fit
interesting.
25 knives in this ultrasonic, like perfectly lined up. Um, and then what we were doing is putting like any kind of detergent in there or whatever. We started with dish soap, which I actually really like for this. And so we'd ultrasonic them real quick for like 5 minutes out of the tumbler. And so when you pull it out of the tumbler and you set it in there, it doesn't get a chance to dry out. So
Right.
as long as it's wet, because it's MagnaCut, it's not going to rust. As long as it's
Yeah.
wet, it's not going to get the hard water.
Yeah.
And then as long as you're pulling them out of there one at a time and oiling them, then you're better off. But here's the thing: if we thought about if you took and you use that ultrasonic cleaner full of coolant instead of soap, the coolant could be the actual oil that blocks the dry out. And so it's like, what if you ran an ultrasonic coolant with that Hangsterfers in it that would not only like kind of disturb that media and get them clean, but then you drip dry them and they wouldn't get hard water stained because it's oily. You know what I mean?
That's
That's
an interesting idea.
and the reason we were talking about Hangsterfers is it's a knife that could theoretically be used for food prep. And I
Sure.
don't want to, because like if you just put a regular machine coolant in there, then it's like, what, you have to ultrasonic clean it again,
Right.
else you're like putting non-food safe stuff on a knife. So I'm like, because we only use food safe lube on
So
like
like
everything.
arguably you could use, like, it sounds weird, but you could like use vegetable oil. You could try that.
The only problem I have is that if it's just straight
It's
oil,
weird. Yeah.
it is going to be way too oily
Yeah.
because you're going to have to like literally dry it with like 20,000 paper towels. But if you use coolant, because it's water soluble, it's only going to be like, 5% or 8% or whatever. And so it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't like, if you pull something out of a machine and you let it air dry on a bench, you don't like literally look at it and it's like covered in oil. It just leaves like a tiny microfilm once the water evaporates. And
I
so,
I like, in the back of my head, I feel like there is a product that
yes,
is
there's got
almost
to be.
specifically for this that
There's got to be.
I think is a better solution than Hangsterfers in this case. Because what you're going to get, you're still going to get evaporation and you still have water in it.
Yeah,
So the potential for rust exists, and also just kind of like a slightly more annoying amount of maintenance than you may want. There
could be.
is
Could
something.
be. And so that brings
Um,
me up the point of like, okay, so if you order a knife made out of D2 that has a satin finish on it,
yeah,
and it's a bit like a Scotch Brite satin finish,
yeah.
shows up in the box looking dry, but it's not rusted. What is on that? Because it's like if I like those large manufacturers, they can't just be sitting there with the rags like wiping them down. You know what I mean? Like, what is the mechanized way to put a film that is food safe on those, like on a utensil, like a
It's got to be
kitchen.
like a wax base or
Yeah, and
something.
how is it applied? Because like that's where we were trying to circle around it because oiling, 25 to 50 knives one at a time and like rubbing it in and wiping
It's
it off,
annoying.
it sucks. It's just not cool. So
The wipe. I was gonna say the one thing you could do. We've talked about the I forget what they're called, but basically it's a spray can with a Schrader valve. So you open it up, you pour whatever you want. I use them for WD-40. So I
hmm
pour my WD-40 in, I charge it to 90 psi, and you basically get a spray can.
hmm that's
You
awesome.
could put any food safe spray in there. And then the beauty of that is, like, you lay all the knives out, you spray them. So case study for this would be like when I do side pops. I'm like, this morning I pulled brass side pops out of the tumbler. Same exact issue. So
hmm
I take air, I dry them off. I I have a rag in my other hand. I like dry off any additional kind of like moisture. I lay them down. Soon as I finish the batch, I spray them all with WD-40, flip them, spray them, and then they sit there until I'm ready to basically go to
Yeah.
final finish. at which case I dry them. The
That
but that's a lot of touching each
yeah,
piece.
that and see that's where we're at is like what we're doing works,
Yeah,
but it's like oh every time the tumbler is like oh we just hit our time mark we got to pull them out. It's like put down everything you're doing like it's this big project to
right.
get knives out of the tumbler, and I'm like obviously in a big facility there this is not a project because if they're pulling 1,000 knives out of a tumbler they're not oiling and wiping a
Each one.
thousand knives, right? Like
Uh, I wonder if they're tumble drying. The only problem with that is I feel like you could increase the risk of like scratching,
yeah,
but they have tumbler setups that are specifically for drying parts.
but the only problem is it has to be cleaned. It has to
Mm-hmm.
be cleaned first, and that isn't super easy to do because if you use an ultrasonic, like it's going to continue, like it'll be clean once. Like if you put distilled water in it, it'll be clean that first time. Then
Yeah.
the next batch, it will not be clean. It'll be hard water. So that's where we're at is like, so the
Oh, that's a
thought
really
is
interesting.
the thought is if you had a machine coolant like water soluble oil, either Hangsterfers or something like that, you take the knives out, you put them directly into those slots, like I said, in the
Yeah.
ultrasonic. You run the ultrasonic for a second, it kind of disturbs the solution and
Mm-hmm.
gets some of that media off the knife. Then you could just lift that basket out, let it drip dry, and then send them straight to sharpening. You know what I mean? Is the thought. So you're not actually touching a knife other than to get it out of the tumbler.
Okay.
That's
I want to I want to think on this one some
conceptual.
more.
But if
Yeah.
anyone's
Are you
listening,
are you using any uh compound in your tumbler? Like, do you use like a burnishing compound?
we don't.
Okay. So that might be an intermediate step is to
Hmm.
use like super sun sheen.
Yeah.
I will send you an image because
Uh,
it's basically a detergent,
yeah.
but one thing it does is it helps your media stay clean and cut
Yeah.
more consistently.
That's useful. I should definitely look into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen it. I've
Um,
seen that used and I don't know. I never really dug into it, but I
yeah.
definitely need to look into it.
And then the only other thing like that I've been kind of wondering about is Burr King has so like I've got a 5 gallon bucket with an aquarium pump, basically. Okay. I keep the aquarium pump elevated off the bottom of the bucket, but I can watch the finish of parts change as it gets loaded
Yep.
with ceramic.
It does. Yep.
Okay. Burr King makes like a pre-filter that is seems like it could be pretty interesting. And like a
Mm,
lot of this stuff can be like hacked together. It's like
yeah.
people running like whole house filters on their CNC,
Yeah.
right?
One thing, here's a thought. One thing I have seen multiple people do is they have water that comes into the tumbler
Yeah.
straight out off the water line. So there's no pump at all. It's just water
Yes.
coming straight out of the house.
Yeah.
And then it's just collected and it's just
Yeah.
wastewater.
Yeah. And they make tumbling systems that are like you can have a gravity feed water, like so your water's up
Yeah,
above.
yeah,
You
yeah,
have 5 gallons on a drip system, and then it drips through the system into
yeah. Through a
another
filter.
bucket, and
Yeah,
that's it. And then you trash that.
yeah,
I actually I'm like used to living in deserts, and it's like a weird thing to probably like hang my hat on, but I'm like, oh, I'm gonna like make my water last.
yeah, yeah.
It's like, and it probably does not matter at all.
Right.
Um, but you don't need to change it every single time.
Yeah, yeah. We
Like
found that.
you can probably get like 10 batches out of the tumbler on like one mix of water. Then
Yeah,
it's like your tooling.
yeah.
You just know like, all right, if I wait this long, now this it starts to get a
And
rough finish.
I've gotten to where I can look at the bucket and be like, ah, it's too much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like you can just see it. It's like it's too
Yeah.
milky, too cloudy.
Too milky. Exactly.
And it just the finish gets more gray on the knife. I've noticed like
Exactly.
it
You
goes
lose
from
the
being sheen
brightness.
to
Yeah.
to being dull, and then it doesn't abrade the sandblast if you're pre-blasting. It
Yeah.
doesn't abrade it as deep as far.
Yeah.
And so I think
Because
part of
it's
why,
essentially insulating it.
yeah, exactly, it's preventing abrasion, and
Yeah.
so they may be more gray actually because there's actually just less abrasion, so there's more sandblast remaining.
I think first step, I think try a burnishing compound
mhm.
because I think it'll make your media and your, do we call it?
So
I guess it's coolant, but it's not like,
right,
whatever
yeah,
your
yeah,
tumbling compound
yeah, your
juice is.
slurry, yeah.
Yeah, your slurry.
But the only problem I agree. The only problem is we still got to oil them, and
Still
that's
got
the
to oil
problem,
them.
you know. So it's like, how can we not manually oil them? So I'm curious about the hangster first. If we can do, like I said, dip, ultrasonic, and hangster first, air dry with the right ratio of that, would it just work without touching them? You know what I mean? It's curious because I
Wonder
know
if I
like
could like test it for you
because
here just with like some 5%. Like,
right. Well, I mean, half the battle of, or half the reason you run like machine coolant, other than coolant and chip evacuation, is like if you're running steel parts, they just come out naturally insulated, right? Like as long as you're not stacking them where the water can't evaporate,
right.
as long as they're air exposed, unless it's like straight up, pure iron, it's like you just don't like our soft steel blanks. Like they come out
Mm-hmm.
of the machine, they could sit for months straight out of the
Right.
machine and they never are going to rust. And it's because they have that 8% of the coolant in the water remains
Right.
permanently.
What coolant are you using now?
It's Omida is the brand, and
Amita.
it's just like, so there's a Haas dealership here in
Yeah, yeah.
town, and then they're like an adjunct with like a Eclipse Tool is the company, so it's like a tooling company and a Haas distributor together, and they just say like, yeah, we just recommend this to everybody. They've got like 50 buckets of it in their front room, so it's like it just seems like it's like the Boise thing. It's just kind of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you go down there and get the Omida that they have. And I assume they have their reasons, but I wasn't gonna. I mean, you walk into the front desk and you're standing next to this pile of buckets. I'm like, what am I
Yeah.
gonna argue with
Wait,
them?
yeah. I don't want that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like,
So it is.
what
I
is
mean,
is it Blazer? Is the Blazer the one that is like water clear?
I there's another one that starts with an S. I forget, but yeah, there's a couple that are like straight, look like water, which I don't like.
It is
Freaks me
disturbing.
out. Freaks me
Yeah.
out.
I like my weird, like blue alien goop.
Yeah,
It lets
yeah.
me
The
know. I can like look at it and be like, oh yeah, this level of blue, like, oh, it's too rich.
yeah,
Or it's like, okay, it's turning green. Like now
yeah.
it means the water's evaporating.
Yeah, I see the clear like on a machine table, just like clear water
Yeah,
running
you're like,
across them.
ugh.
Like cringe, dude.
Oh, you just want to go wipe it.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, what's the other one? Anyway, I can't remember. But
There's like Swiss Lube or like
yeah,
like
synergy.
Blades or
That's what I was. Synergy.
Synergy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, I'm super. The Omida I've had like in the style, I've not found a reason to change it.
Yeah.
It's just I know that it's not necessarily food grade,
Right.
or it's not necessarily like crazy toxic, but it's not like I don't want to put it on an overland. And then
Do you ever have any skin problems? Like do your
uh
hands ever get
Dalton mentioned it.
yeah.
He he's like, I have like a red mark. It was like the first week.
So if
And
he's
then,
getting that, be
well,
careful.
so I need to check in with him again
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that was a year ago. And
It's
then
basically like psoriasis kind of deal. Like it
so
can create like skin
yeah, I'll
infections.
make sure because I told him I was like, dude, if that happens again, we're switching the coolant. And then
Yeah, yeah.
I think it was just like
One
like it
time.
happened one time. So I don't know if that's related, but we should
Mhm.
definitely, for that reason, I would consider going to the Hangsterfers in the machine as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll look into it for
That was
sure.
one of the like the shop that I worked in that ran screw machines. They use like I remember their oil like it is straight up oil.
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah,
smelled like
yeah.
oil, looked like oil, and the
Mhm.
machinists like a lot of times their hands were like jacked up. And then there was like we would like get like these like blooms of like algae and stuff, and I was like, I just want no part of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
And well, and that stuff actually is oil. It's like
yeah,
those screw machines. It's like straight, like a
yeah,
55-gallon drum of actual
I
oil.
know, man.
Yeah, yeah.
I
And they
can
have like
smell it if I think about
they
it.
have to have fire
Basically,
suppression on those
yeah.
machines because it doesn't have water in it. That stuff will burn. So
Oh,
yeah,
dude, we went like super nerdy machinist stuff today. That was kind of
yeah,
fun.
yeah. No
That
kidding.
was
I like it.
unintended tangent.
Yeah, I like it though. Yeah, it's a good one. First recording in the new shop.
Oh,
It's been
congrats.
it's been good. It's been good. But
All
I'm
right,
glad the old hotspot held up. That was
dude, that's amazing.
concerning. Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
This like Verizon hotspot, like I've been using my phone to give Wi-Fi to the whole shop. Like I said, the shop's 60 feet long. If my phone's in the front corner, it's giving Wi-Fi to the whole shop with like no lag. And it's just good. I'm
That's
like,
great.
it's really impressed actually. I thought it was going to be a total like rough experience to use hotspot until they set that up. But
Yeah.
I will say
Solid.
this, we're hooking up with cable internet.
Nice.
Sparklight is the company, but it's like
Uh-huh.
coaxial cable based. They're setting us up with a 1 gig download speed, which I don't. I'm like, do you have like a lesser one? I mean, is that expensive?
Like, I don't know if
And
I need that.
they're like, I mean, that's your industrial. Like, we just send. That's just standard. And I'm like, shoot, I guess I'll download
Take it.
like 40 gigabytes a day, like
Everything.
easily. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's 1 gig down is like, I think our house where we were was like 200 megabytes down, and it was fast. And
Yeah.
it's like 5 times that. It's crazy. If it actually is that, I'll do a speed test. They may be BSing me, but next week.
Close. Something.
Next week we'll do a speed test on the pod and we'll see what we
Okay.
actually get.
Sounds good. Are we, so we should be good, like get back on a weekly schedule, I think, like
Yeah,
for a little while. Holy
yeah,
cow, man.
yeah, yeah. Things are cooling down over here. We're finally like tomorrow's Friday, and we work fours, so it's like I can actually look at Friday and be like, yeah, I'm gonna go hang out with the kids and go do some stuff. It
Amazing.
feels good because it was like 45 days straight of like move, 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 move.
7 days a
So
week.
yeah,
Yeah. And stretch, man. All
yeah,
right, man. Congratulations, guys. Thank you for listening to this episode. Sorry about the delay and the gap. It's life.
yeah, yeah. That's how it goes. I appreciate you guys. Thanks
Yep.
for those in Patreon, and all that.
Yep.
You guys are awesome.
Let us
And
know if there's anything you guys want us
yeah,
to talk about or you got questions on what we're
yeah,
working on, anything like that.
heck yeah.
All
Peace.
right. Take it easy.